Welcome to another edition of the Hardline Curling Show. On this episode, a familiar face returns to the top while another breaks through on the Grand Slam circuit. Teams across Canada begin chasing a national title, and a broom maker at the center of the latest equipment controversy comes out swinging in defense of its product and one of the teams that uses it. All of that, plus we catch up with one of the top skips in the men's game. We've got a jam-packed show, so let's get started. The first three Grand Slam of curling events this season were largely dominated by two teams, with Bruce Mowat's rink from Scotland claiming the three men's titles and Rachel Homan's team capturing the last two on the women's side after reaching the final in the season opener. But it turns out both squads are still, in fact, mortal, though they still made some noise again at the WFG Masters in Guelph, Ontario. We'll start with the men's bracket, where Team Mowat was looking to become just the second team in Grand Slam history to win 4 straight events. A new twist at this year's Masters saw the top seeds get to draft their pool opponents as well as the crossover opponent for each team in their pool. Team Mowat placing themselves in a pool with teams Nick Adine, Marco Hossley, and Jordan McDonald, and selecting Mike McEwen's rink for its crossover game. And the strategy seemed to work, as the Scots would go 3-1 in the round robin, with their only loss coming at the hands of Team Adine. However, after bouncing Team Yannick Schwaller out of Switzerland in the quarterfinals, Mowat's quest for 4 would come to an abrupt end in the semis with a 7-5 loss to Pool B winner Brad Jacobs, the same team they beat in the final at the last slam, the Coyote National. Meanwhile, the other semifinal featured the other two pool winners, skipped by Matt Dunstone and Ross White, and in a bit of an upset, it was Team White coming out on top, also by a score of 7-5. That meant a final featuring Team Jacobs looking for its first Grand Slam title in 5 years, and Team White seeking its first ever. It was a defensive battle to start, with the teams tied at 1 after 4 ends. After exchanging deuces, Jacobs forced to settle for a single in the 7th, taking a 1-point lead into the final end, but giving up the hammer. And that was enough of an opening for White, who would make the soft tap for 2 and 8, securing a 5-4 victory and his first ever Grand Slam title. White is the 4th Scottish skip to win a Grand Slam, joining Mowat, Ross Patterson, and Eve Muirhead. Meanwhile, over on the women's side, Team Homan continuing to perform at a high level, winning their first 3 games in the round robin before suffering a rare loss to Team Rana, albeit having largely secured their playoff spot already. The number 1 team in the world would bounce right back with victories over Team Tiranzoni and Kim in the quarters and semis respectively. So for the 4th time in 4 events, Rachel Homan making it to the championship game, where she would face a resurgent Team Anna Hasselberg in a rematch of the Coyote National Final. The Swedish foursome looking to cap off a strong week of its own, going a perfect 4-0 in pool play before defeating upstarts Team Tabata from Japan and fellow Swedes Team Rana in the playoffs. In a reversal of the Coyote National Final, this time it was Team Hasselberg starting with the hammer. They'd trade deuces to start off, but it was Hasselberg's steal of 1 in the 4th that proved to be critical, flipping the hammer, and with Homan unable to manufacture a steal of her own, ultimately giving it to the Swedish skip, with the game tied entering the final end. And after a Homan freeze on her last stone made shot rock too close to call, Hasselberg calmly drew for what turned out to be 2 points and a 7-5 win to claim the WFG Masters title. It's the 8th Grand Slam title overall for Team Hasselberg, and their first since the 2022 Players' Championship. Our guest this week has been on a pretty good roll as of late. He's coming off a semi-final appearance at the WFG Masters, which followed a big win at the Aztec Safety Challenge. Results that bode well for his team's revamped lineup. Matt Dunstone joining us here on the Hardline Curling Show. Matt, thanks for doing this.
Taylor, absolutely. Good to see you.
Let's quickly revisit last week's Grand Slam. Undefeated in the round robin before running into the eventual champs, Team White, in the semifinals. How do you feel about your guys' performance at that event?
Yeah, I mean, it was disappointing. Disappointing finish, I should say. Obviously, it was a great start. We went on a bit of a win streak there, if you count Lloydminster as well. Kind of had the feeling that we were going to win that one, but ran into a hot Scottish team who ended up taking it all. But it was a great 2 weeks overall, and I think it sets us up well for what's to come in the next month.
We've talked about the new wrinkles added this year to the Masters with the draft and the no double blank ends rule. What do you think of the new tweaks this year?
I thought the draft was fun. I think it's something unique. You really didn't see, especially in the playoffs, you didn't see any matchups that would be different than what they wouldn't be. There was a couple, but not many. Just a fun little aspect. Something different, which curling is usually afraid of change. So I was glad we dove into something like that, had some fun with it. I think the draft part all worked out fairly well, and with the double blank ends, really didn't take too much away from how we normally play. Obviously played a little bit different, but I don't think we saw any ill effects of it this week. Could probably use few tweaks. What those look like, I'm not totally sure yet, but I'm not sold that would be one that I'd love to see stick. But the idea behind it and the reasoning behind it, I think, is something that makes sense from a viewership and entertainment standpoint.
Was there a point at all where you guys had to decide a change in strategy with that rule in place?
Yeah, I would say, there was probably a scenario in every single game, where that did come into play. I think the biggest thing with that is when you blanked an end, and you're playing that second blank where the other team has to score. It's, if you're tied without hammer, typically you're at a disadvantage, whereas there you can play very defensively. You can play it as if you're 2 or 3 up, because full well that the other team has to go and score. So that's the part of it I didn't really like. Just you don't really get to play the scoreboard the way it should be played, in that scenario. But it made it interesting on how we went about things, especially in a closer game. 1 point tied game. It made it a little bit different than it normally would.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how far that goes and if there's any sort of developments outside of the Masters. Let's talk about your new lineup. EJ Harnden has replaced BJ Neufeld, and of course the Brush brothers are reunited. It's one thing to make a change during the offseason for your lineup, but another to do it mid-season. Take me through the discussion between your team and what made sense for you to do it when you guys did it.
Yeah, I mean, there's never a good time to do something like this, a lineup change. There's been a lot of it this year, which, is very surprising, I would say. Nobody really expected that or saw it coming. The biggest thing was, we're a year out pretty much to the day of the Olympic trials. And, we gotta, if we're going to do something and try and, move forward and get to that next level, that's something we felt like we had to do, sooner than later, just because time is of the essence. Like I said, a year out from the Olympic trials, that's what we've got our eyes on. And, just the more time we had to play as a team or a new team, gel and see what we had to work on, was we thought was going to be a benefit to us. And I mean, we're happy with how things have gone up to this point. We have some things we need to work on and iron out a little bit, but happy with what we're seeing so far.
Would you guys have made the change if EJ wasn't a free agent at the time, or did that obviously change the dynamic of what went into the decision?
Yeah, I mean, that plays a major role in it. I mean, you don't make change for the sake of making change. And, BJ is a phenomenal player. He's proven that over, the last 10, 15 years. He's been one of the top thirds in the game. And, you just a guy like EJ, is sweeping, what he brings at the second position, that only comes around so often. And, that we saw that as an opportunity to bring on a guy like that. With the experience and the success that he's had in recent years, just something that we felt like we couldn't pass up on.
And now Colton Lott obviously has to make a move. How has that transition been for him, and what can he bring to the team in a new role?
Yeah, very, very easy transition for Colton. Third's been his spot. He tried the second thing for a few years, and I think now we're really seeing him shine. Third has always been his position. I've won all my junior stuff with him playing third, so obviously there's a high level of comfort there. I'm very excited for the world to see, how well he's going to excel in this role and how well he already has. You see a new side of, intensity and engagement and excitement in his game when he's playing third, which is something that, not many had seen with him playing second. So, I mean, over the coming weeks at the Brier, that's what a lot of people are going to see. And, he's one of, the best shot makers in the world.
Yeah, of course, we've got to talk about the Brier now. We're into provincial playdown season. You guys are going to be spectating because, of course, you've already qualified for the Montana's Brier. Thanks to your performance last season, how does it feel to know that you don't have to go through that provincial gauntlet? You can sit back, relax, watch, and get ready for that event?
Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time of year. I mean, playing in the provincial events are obviously a lot of fun. They're some of the best events you can play in, most high pressure events you can play in. So I miss that aspect of it, but just being able to plan out our season, to be ready, as best that we know how for the Brier is such a huge plus. This time of year, we have the 6 weeks off right now to train and get together and practice and make sure we're ready to rock for the Brier. It's a fun couple weeks here, getting to sit back, watch everybody duke it out and see who's going to join us.
There's probably something to be said, though, for sharpening up your game in the playdowns, riding that momentum, getting that win and heading to the Brier versus having that rest, having that preparation. How do you sort of balance that? And how do you guys prepare over these next 6 weeks to make sure you're ready without having to play that championship?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's going to be no games, from here until then, until we get going on Friday night at the Brier there. But we played so many games over the course of our careers, and we've played I've played in a handful of Briers now. The Hardins have played in a million Briers, so I mean, we know what we're getting ourselves into. We have the experience on the team, to make sure that we are ready for that. So, I mean, the long break is very far from a concern for us, especially having, gone through it last year, made, the tweaks we felt necessary to make sure we were more ready this time around. But, just the rest and recovery, no excuses to have our bodies and mind ready to go for that Brier, I think is such a huge benefit that outweighs, the potential positive from carrying momentum through a provincial championship.
Every team obviously goes in to win. You've made it to the semifinal before, the final before. What's the mindset this year? Obviously to win the championship, but what's it going to take for you guys to have that great week and come out on top?
Just put ourselves in that position again. Try and get off to a hot start, put ourselves in the driver's seat, to make the week as short as possible. Try and get into that 1-2 game. And, at the end of the week, that's when you need to have the most gas in the tank. So, if we can come out firing early, be sharp and win a few games off the bat and put ourselves in a spot to make that 1-2 game, I think that's position A. And if not, we'll deal with that when the time comes. But, ultimately it just comes down to putting yourself in the playoffs again, putting yourself in a position to make that final and let the chips fall where they may. I mean, there's so many great teams to come out and try and do something more, do something extra. I mean, all the top teams are doing that. It's about putting yourself in that position, playing the best when it matters most and being opportunistic in those big games when those opportunities present themselves.
Awesome, Matt. Well, I appreciate the time. Enjoy the break, and we look forward to watching you at the Brier in a few weeks' time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Taylor.
Time for break. When we come back, we'll have a look at the provincial playdowns across the country and a statement from Balance Plus about the equipment controversy taking over the curling world.
This is it. It all comes down to this rock. The hours in the gym, the weeks away from my family. This is what I've been training for. And all those voices trying to tear me down, I'm here to silence them. We've given everything we have for a chance to get everything we want.
The live sports experience is changing. Teams and facilities are under pressure to provide online and in-venue entertainment. IKS Live has the right team to deliver. We provide service across North America and produce the best fan experience, in the seats or streaming to you. IKS Live continues to bring you the best seat in the house.
Everything I've worked for, everything I've sacrificed has led to this. It's out of your hands now. All the gold medals in the world can't help you now. You could throw the perfect rock and still miss, but it just takes one. You leave it all out there on the ice to leave behind a legacy.
Let's stay on the national championship front as we are already in the thick of the provincial playdown calendar. A number of provinces have already named their representatives for the Montana's Brier and the Scotties Tournament of Hearts, while others are in the midst of their playdowns as we speak. Let's start with the Brier, which kicks off February 28th in Kelowna, BC. And as you just heard, Team Dunstone has already pre-qualified as one of the 3 wildcard entries. The others are Team Jacobs and Team McEwen. So it'll be the Prairies well represented with 2 teams from Alberta, 2 from Saskatchewan, and 2 from Manitoba in the mix. Of course, the defending champs, Team Gushu, will be back once again as Team Canada looking to win an unprecedented 4th straight Brier title. Both Nova Scotia and Quebec wrapped up their playdowns last weekend. In Nova Scotia, it was 2022 Canadian junior champion Owen Purcell defeating Kendall Thompson to qualify for his first Brier with a team coached by none other than Colleen Jones. Meanwhile, a familiar face is back to represent Quebec as Jean-Michel Menard, who became the first skip from that province to win the Brier in 2006, has joined forces with Felix Asselan, who will be making his 6th Brier appearance. Menard's last trip to the national championship came in 2017. He will skip and throw 3rd stones for the team, while Asselan throws 4th. Meanwhile, a pair of territories have also named their Brier teams, with Thomas Scoffin set to skip Team Yukon for a 6th time, while Shane Latimer will represent Nunavut for a 2nd straight year. Over to the Scotties now, which will take place in Thunder Bay, Ontario, starting on February 14th. The pre-tournament favorites have to be Team Homan, who will be wearing the maple leaf as the defending champions. This will be Rachel Homan's 11th Scotties. She's made the final in 6 of her previous 10 appearances, winning 3 titles overall. The trio of pre-qualified wildcard ranks includes a pair from Manitoba in Teams Carrie Anerson and Team Caitlin Laws. Alberta's Selena Sturmey, who finished 4th in her Scotties debut last year, is also qualified. Meanwhile, Nova Scotia will once again be represented by a team led by Christina Black, who is making her 6th trip to the Scotties and 3rd as a skip. Laurie St. George will be back for a 5th straight year skipping Team Quebec, with a familiar face in former Scotties champion Lisa Weigel at lead. New Brunswick, Melissa Adams is also back for more. She'll be competing in her 6th Scotties with her team from Fredericton. All 3 territorial representatives are also locked in, with mainstay Carrie Galusha set to make an incredible 23rd career appearance from the Northwest Territories, while Bailey Scoffin will carry the flag for Yukon and Julie Weigel will skip Team Nunavut. There are still a number of berths to be decided for both the Brier and the Scotties, several of which will be in the next few days. Saskatchewan, Ontario, and British Columbia are all in the midst of their provincial playdowns as we speak, and we will fill you in on all the latest qualifiers next week on the show. It seems the debate over the latest developments in broom technology isn't going away anytime soon. If the discussion that kicked up a few years ago was Broomgate, then this is Foamgate, with a new generation of foam broom head covers sitting at the center of the controversy. Last week, we saw a joint statement from 30 teams, 15 men's and 15 women's, calling for a global standard when it comes to equipment testing and use, all in the name of fair play. However, now one of the equipment manufacturers is defending both its head covers and one of the teams that uses them, saying they've been unfairly targeted, and also casting doubt over a number of teams that actually signed on to the joint statement. Balance Plus is one of the 3 companies named in last week's player statement, along with Goldline Curling and Hardline Curling, but notably the only one that did not sign the document, informally known as the Proposal for Fair Play in Curling. While a number of topics were covered in the proposal, the main issue surrounds the latest generation of foam head covers, with the players who signed the document believe are having too much directional impact on stones traveling down the ice. In a statement of its own released January 16th, the company says that its Firm Foam 2.0 head covers were developed in adherence to World Curling specifications, and that the covers have already been used in a number of competitions, including the recent Canadian mixed doubles trials, adding that the performance advantages provided by the head covers reflects innovation rather than unfair play. But they went a step further, saying the fact that teams who signed off on the proposal are largely sponsored by either Goldline or Hardline, suggesting that corporate interests rather than a desire for fairness are at its heart. The statement also goes on to say that Team Epping, the only rink at last week's WFG Masters that uses Balance Plus brooms, was unfairly singled out. It also claims that much of the information contained in the proposal itself is inaccurate, and that some players and teams declined to sign it, while others were surprised to find their names attached to it. The full statement, which closes for a call for inclusive discussions between all concerned parties, can be found on the company's website, balanceplus.com. Needless to say, it appears that Foamgate isn't going anywhere anytime soon. We'll, of course, keep you posted on any further developments in the weeks to come. And that about does it for this week. Thanks again to Matt Dunstone for taking some time to chat. Remember to follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up with all the latest news. You can also find every episode of the Hardline Curling Show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Our next episode comes your way on January 31st. Until then, thanks for watching and good curling.